Welcome. This is It's Not Sports. We're celebrating the birth of America today.
Why? Happy birthday.
And we're by voicing our unrestricted opinions. This is Callie Sinovia. I'm your host. I'm here with Tyson Rex. How are you?
I'm great. And it is amazing. This is actually one of the few countries on earth where you can voice your opinion with repercussions, but not from the government, but from your friends.
Which is the best kind, right? We get to keep each other in check, and sometimes we can blow each other off because sometimes blowing out hot air. But why is that important? I think that's just important because, especially in today's political environment, we get to voice our opinion on what is going on in the White House, how disruptive, or you can even go to a lower level of petty in describing the behaviors of what's going on. But we don't even, it's not even, it goes beyond that. We get to have an opinion on everything. And I think that's so great that we don't have any caps, no restrictions. It is just how we see it. It is our perspective, our own individual truths. And I think that's a pillar of why this country is so great. And you hear this saying all the time, this great country. And it does sound cheesy because I think it's just because it's reiterated so much as you grow up. But as you go out into the world, experience different countries for what they are, their political environments, and sometimes the way that country, the culture of that country is, it inhibits how you might express yourself, which is something that being an American, you don't think about often. You just are who you are. I went to Istanbul a couple years ago. I made an attempt to dress more modestly, and it's not that I don't dress modestly. It's just that term is a lot, that the meaning of that term is very different in Istanbul than it is in America. For instance, if I wanted to visit a historical site, a mosque, I wore pants and a tank top and a scarf for my hair. And they, even with in that clothing, they still gave me a skirt to put on top of my pants because my pants were too tight, and like a shirt that was flowy. So because my clothing was too tight to enter that mosque, which is it's just completely different from the culture that I happen to have been brought up in. And why is that? And the reason why being able to voice your opinion is so important in this country is because there have been so many inequalities, so many injustices that have occurred, and if people weren't able to speak up and talk about these injustices, these inequalities, then they would not be able to enact change. And I think that's a central point to what America stands for, who we are as Americans, standing up for those who don't have the strongest voice. And I think to tie this all back together with sports, ESPN's 30 for 30, The Best of Enemies, featuring the rivalry between the Boston Celtics and the LA Lakers, really demonstrated this American ideal of being able to speak up for what you you believe in. And I think it's the beginning of what we know today as athletes becoming activists and giving a voice to those that don't have a voice. And specifically starting with Bill Russell, who gets drafted to Boston by Red Auerbach, the first Black player that is drafted in Boston. Boston is not a great city for African Americans. Here, Bill Russell plays for 13 years, brings home 11 rings, and still is getting his home vandalized. People are breaking into his home and spray painting vulgarities, the N-word, and the Garden is not being sold out either. They're winning these championships, and you can still buy tickets to go to these games. That's how different it was. And going forward, Red Auerbach's still being the progressive guy he was, goes ahead and hires Bill Russell as the first African American coach, which was really big too. And talk about laying the groundwork for what's to come. Still, there's a long way to go in terms of equality, giving everyone an equal chance at the same job. You hear a lot now about women's rights, but I thought that was really great of that documentary. And then the second thing I think that a documentary did was really give you a look at these great players that you've grown up hearing all about, but you never saw. And another thing, when you're watching these players, obviously that there's been a technology has gotten greater, but like the frames per second, when you're watching the film, it looks different. It makes them look slower than I think they actually were. But it was great to see all these great players. I mean, you already knew about Magic's charisma, but someone I didn't know a lot about was Bill Russell, and I was really impressed by him. And I don't know how he doesn't get talked about more often as the greatest player ever, having only played 13 seasons, winning 11 rings. That's insane.
11 rings, 13 seasons.
Yes. And it was,
wow.
He won a lot of those rings against the Lakers.
Wow.
And that's like the beginning, the seed. And that's, he's playing against Jerry West, the logo. Like, he's the logo, of the NBA,
At least back then, yeah.
he's still very, a lot of these people that they document are still very prominent in the game today. Pat Riley's story is very interesting. He was a play-by-play guy. And the head coach for the Lakers got in a motorcycling accident, and the assistant, Westhead, stepped in, and he's like, "Hey, Pat Riley, I need you to step in and be a coach for a little bit. Come be a coach." And Pat Riley was like, "Okay, I'll try this on." But he always thought he was going to go back into the booth. And then Westhead changed the offense, and Magic hated it, got him fired. And so then Dr. Buss hires Jerry West and Pat Riley as the co-head coaches. And, the rest is history. Now Pat Riley is this big shot
all-time
recruiter.
Great, but he was just a play-by-play guy.
Right. It's his story.
And he gets this temporary opportunity to head coach.
Yeah, like something he wasn't even
so-called temporary.
Something he wasn't even looking into. It just kind of fell into his lap, which was insane.
Wow.
I thought, ESPN does a really great job at these documentaries. I really like the one about the Bad Boy Pistons. All these great teams that predate me by a lot. And, just being able to take me back to those times and being able to understand the intensity, the ferocity, the competition, because it's not that I feel like the intensity and the ferocity is still there, but the players are all friends now. You could just really feel like they didn't like each other. And like Bird, like he had the best stare downs, and I don't know, I really enjoyed that.
The Bad Boy Pistons, was that Isaiah Thomas?
And
Bill Laimbeer?
Yeah, Laimbeer.
I remember watching those guys live against the Jazz, and I hated those guys. I just hated it. Like you would feel this internal animosity towards the team, and Bill Laimbeer, like I still remember his name as a guy I didn't like very much because of just how dirty and rough he was. And Isaiah Thomas ended up being one of the all-time greats. But those Pistons back then, you were scared of them. Like you really felt like when you played them, somebody was going to get hurt.
Yeah, I mean, they played with a level of intensity, definitely. You could feel that. It wasn't, it was all by design. Like they meant to play that way. Yeah, just really, really good. So I have a sinking feeling, and I have a source that has confirmed the sinking feeling, but I have another source that's refuting it, so there might be a little light of day of hope, but we'll get into that on the other side. Welcome back. This is It's Not Sports. Bleacher Report reporting that Gordon Hayward plans to sign with the Boston Celtics. This was reported about an hour ago. I got Adrian Wojnarowski refuting this, saying that he has not made a decision, but that does not make me feel any more confident.
Adrian Wojnarowski, is that his agent?
Adrian Wojnarowski, it works for The Vertical, or I think he just got a job somewhere else. ESPN. He's with ESPN now.
Well, I'd been hearing rumors that Gordon Hayward was going to leave. Not that, being a Utah Jazz fan, it's not that I wanted that. But if that's the truth, it was nice while it lasted.
Yeah.
It was nice to get to the second round of the playoffs once. I mean, the Utah Jazz, and I say we, I say we because we're Utahns, and I grew up watching Karl Malone and John Stockton, and so I guess I took for granted being in the playoffs year after year. And then we've pretty much had a pretty bad run since 2007. So it was nice. Now the question becomes: so what does that mean for Boston? If this is the truth, what do you think?
I think it's a step in the right direction. They definitely need someone that can score. They have great scorers there too right now. I just don't think that they have the number one guy yet. And I just hope that I wish Hayward the best. I'm a proponent of leaving in search of a better situation for you. If I had an opportunity to leave, I wouldn't think twice about being loyal or staying with the company I've been with for several years. I'd just leave. And so much is made about that when athletes decide to mobilize. So good for him. I don't know. I worry about the situation there. I mean, he's definitely going to another great coach. I think we've got a great coach too, Quinn Snyder. But I don't think that they're there yet either. Of course, he has a better chance of being an all-star in the East now with Jimmy Butler and Paul George no longer contending. So I wish him the best. I hope he does well there. He definitely fits the demographic perfectly.
He'll have an incredible point guard in Isaiah Thomas, not to be confused with the Isaiah Thomas of the old days.
Mm-hmm.
And Boston showed themselves to be a competitive team in the East, which is not a hard thing to accomplish.
Yeah, it's not. and like
unfortunately,
I said,
at least right now in today's NBA.
Yeah, and especially with 2 stars leaving and going for the West, I was floored to see George go to the Thunder of all teams. There's been conflicting reports. At first, it seemed like Danny Ainge wasn't willing to give up what he needed to get him into Boston. But I've since heard more reports about how the GM, Pritchard, didn't want Paul George to be in the East. And so he may have not taken the best deal for his team to make sure that that doesn't happen.
I don't get this. I mean, what exactly did Oklahoma give up? I know they gave up
just 2 players.
2 players,
That's
no
it.
draft picks. It seems like a steal to me. Oklahoma, they gave up 2 people who I hadn't heard of. I don't think they're bad players necessarily. Do you know their names?
Oladipo and Sabonis.
No draft picks?
Nope, that's just those 2 players straight up.
I don't understand the trade at all. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think Oklahoma City did great.
And they needed another star. I think you saw it. You saw it with Westbrook in the first round. He just got tired. He couldn't. He was carrying the team. It was too heavy, and he just lost his legs towards the end and just couldn't do anything. And then you saw it with Harden against the Warriors. The last games he played in were terrible. And I think you just lose your legs because you're tired. And, you need... It's evident of needing an additional player to help step up and score some points.
And congratulations to Westbrook, who did win the MVP. I think very much deserved. We may never see another player, at least in the next 10, 20, 30 years, average a triple-double the way that Westbrook did. Oklahoma for 1 year should be pretty interesting. For 1 year. And that's the rumor, is that they're renting. It's almost like this glacial move to the West Coast. They're renting for a year.
Yep, because George did not sign any extension. It's just the remainder of his contract, which is just until the end of the season. So it's good news for the Lakers. It sounds like they're definitely going to get their hands on Paul George next year, which will make them a lot more exciting. Another team that made some big upgrades is the Houston Rockets. Chris Paul gets traded there, and he gets traded for 7 players, a future draft pick, and $661,000. That just sounds like
$661,000.
Yeah. A lot of players Houston had to give up, but I think after first hearing about it, I thought, well, how is that going to work? 2 point guards. Harden's going to move to the two.
Right. Yeah.
How is this going to work? And it's not even just that it's 2 point guards. It's two guards that are very ball centric, that are used to dribbling out the ball. So definitely there's going to be a transition there. Someone's going to have to take a step back. It's going to be like the LeBron and D-Wade situation. Someone's going to have to take the lead and someone's going to have to take a step back. But that doesn't mean it can't be done. LeBron and D-Wade showed us that can be done. And I think, yeah, I mean, you're adding another scorer. You're adding another clutch guy you can depend on. And I think, as I stated before, that's what Harden was missing against the Warriors. I still don't think it gets him over the Warriors. But
yeah. I mean, and we'll have to see. But right now, of course, I don't see anybody getting over the Warriors. Chris Paul, he becomes the point guard.
Yes.
He runs the offense.
Yes.
And Harden becomes shooting forward.
Right. And the shooting guard, right?
Or shooting guard, yeah.
And then you have the coach of the year, D'Antoni, operating the offense, who he'll love the fact that Chris Paul can play some D. And he'll also give Paul many opportunities to score and to assist. So I think this will be a good thing. It's not going to click together very easily. So it's going to take some work, but I think it will be worth it in the end.
Now, where does that leave the Clippers? I read, I think this week, that they re-signed Blake Griffin to a huge multi-year deal.
$173 million, 5 years.
So, is Griffin now the franchise?
Well, he's got to be now. Him and DJ, I mean, they still need. And I saw that there was trade rumors that they're trying to get rid of Crawford. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think that they're going to be a playoff team now. I think that takes them out of it. But, yeah, the Clippers will need to be making some acquisitions and
something.
Yeah, they'll need to do something. And then the other thing, another big change is Minnesota. They get Butler through the draft with a trade from Chicago, and they sign Jeff Teague. Teague gets signed for $57 million, 3-year deal. They trade away Rubio to the Jazz, and then they have Karl Anthony Towns. So a really good little unit right there. That's going to be a interesting big three to look at going forward. And then the other team that I think is interesting, talking about the draft, is the 76ers. It's a very young core. They have one player that has been drafted in the NBA but hasn't played a game yet, Ben Simmons. And then they have Joel Embiid and Okafor. And Embiid and Okafor we're very familiar with in the March Madness tournament. So, and they're still babies. They're still figuring their games out. But Embiid is averaging 20 points a game, 7 rebounds, and Okafor is averaging almost 12 points a game and 4 rebounds. So we got 2 big guys and then Simmons is supposed to be the shooter. So we'll see. I'm excited to kind of see what they do. And then they also got the number 1 pick in the draft, Markelle Fultz. So really like a good young core.
Yeah, super young, but a good start.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see them grow and compete.
Yeah, I mean, and we're projecting years in advance here, but they are in the East. I've really been Joel Embiid's been one of those that I've been really excited to follow on Twitter because he's pretty funny. But as soon as all these stories started breaking about the Stars leaving the East, he tweets a lot of playoff spots opening up ... And I love that. So he's got a great personality. I've been enjoying getting to know him through Twitter. But yeah. All right. I want to get into some NBA rumors. We saw the deal for Chris Paul, only 1 year. We see Paul George doesn't sign an extension. He's just going to play out the rest of his contract, which is 1 year. And who else?
OKC rents Paul George for a year.
Essentially.
That's the rumor. And Paul George is going to continue to go westward.
And who else happens to be up on their contract in a year? Who other than Mr. LeBron James?
LeBron James. The rumor here, I mean, his permanent home, his personal home, is in LA. So the rumor is that LeBron, after 1 more year, heads westward to join the rhymes with
Fakers.
Takers. Makers.
Being lifelong Utah fans, you cannot, on any circumstance.
The Los Angeles Bastards, as far as I'm concerned.
God.
But of course, not as bad as the Chicago Devils.
Mules.
Yeah, Chicago Mules. So that's the rumor. 2018, you get this super team. LeBron James.
Paul George. And who knows, maybe they throw in Chris Paul. The Lakers just drafted Lonzo Ball. He's supposed to be a really great point guard, so there might not be enough room for Chris Paul,
but then somehow the Warriors made room for Durant. So so you never know. Leaving Chris Paul out of the picture, because I haven't heard as much about him.
Mm-hmm.
But a LeBron James, Paul George, and who did the Lakers just draft?
Oh, Lonzo Ball.
Alonzo Ball. And
then they also they have Brandon Ingram, who needs to put on weight. Did they get rid of? I'm not sure if they got rid of Julius Randle, but I think he'll be a good piece too. But I mean, real young core. We got Luke Walton, who's the coach of the team, former player. So
the question is, leaving Chris Paul out of the picture, can they compete? Now, this is way in the future because it's not even the 2017 season yet. But in our minds, can they compete without Chris Paul?
I think they compete for sure. I mean, they have the young core, which is what the Cavaliers were missing this last year. They just ran out of gas. So, I mean, yeah, they can compete.
And by compete, I mean against Golden State.
Yeah. And
I mean, they'll obviously be able to compete against the Utah Jazz.
Oh,
I know.
Why'd you have to say that?
That's rough. That was bad of me.
Yeah.
But
Let's not talk about that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what the 3-point shooting looks like because that's going to be a focal point. But definitely defensively, they'll be able to have a leg up on what we just saw with Cleveland as it's currently constituted. And I think, I don't know if there's ever going to be a team with that many great shooters on it. So it might not be the best way to combat it to try and outshoot them, but rather put a body on them and be out physical them.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, the Jazz almost won a game against the Warriors. I mean, the Jazz almost competed as well as the Cavs, which is saying a lot about the Jazz and not saying so much about the Cavs. But what the Jazz had going for them was defense.
Mm-hmm.
And
the one game that Cleveland really rocked them was the game they got really physical with them. So, there's so many things, so many questions I still have about the finals. It's hard to. I'm a huge LeBron fan, so it's really hard to have this another ding, so to speak, against his legacy in the way that it happened, because it just seemed like there were avenues that they could have pursued, but they didn't for whatever reason. But I mean, Warriors honestly just ball out. They're the better team. There's no one's being prophetic and saying like, oh, they're the consensus winner. I mean, everyone knew that they were going to win that game, and there was just this little sliver of a chance just because the other team had the best player in the world, that maybe that might be not be the case, but it was a slim chance.
Just maybe. And thankfully it wasn't a sweep. Because it after watching the first two games, it looked like it very well could be a sweep. It was interesting in the anomaly that Cleveland won in Game 4, I believe it was. Where here they're down 3-0 and they just slaughtered the Warriors from the get-go, from the very first quarter. I was on the road listening to the game on a radio signal that was fading in and out. But Cleveland just utterly dominated one game. Didn't just barely win, but just dominated the game. And then now people were going, "Oh, it's 3-1." Man, just like last year. There wasn't a chance. And you saw that just on average in the first three games, where Cleveland's playing their normal best and the Warriors' normal best was better by 20 points a game.
Yeah, it's congratulations to the Warriors. They're going to be the consensus best team from here on. For next,
who knows? Yeah,
as long as they can keep that team together. I thought it was interesting. The NBA tweeted out this graphic of the cost of keeping the Warriors together. In the next season's going to total $181 million. 42 of that being luxury tax, and that just exponentially increases each year, from 42 to 90 to 198 to 202 million. That's just luxury tax.
That's just luxury
tax. And then the total being 181, 244, 373, 400. So this is going to break at some point.
Yeah. Maybe in 4 years.
I don't know. I just don't think that's sustainable. But while we have them together, it's going to be an amazing show.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I'm just looking 2020, 2021. That's the year to to look at. $400 million total to keep them together. $177 million in salary, $222 million in tax.
I mean, mind you, Curry did luxury. Just
now,
sign
congratulations, Curry.
A supermax deal, $201 million over 5 years. Totally deserves it.
And
he does so much for the game.
Up until this point, he had been, not criminally underpaid. No one saw Curry coming.
Mm-hmm.
But
he had injuries, and he just wasn't consistent.
Yeah, no one saw it coming. And now you've got a two-time MVP winner getting one of the biggest deals in NBA history, and I'm sure it'll be eclipsed and by whatever deal brings LeBron to LA. But congratulations to Curry. Well deserved. I no one saw him coming. I didn't see him coming. I mean, we talk about it as if it's a given now because of the last 3 years, but 4 years ago, 5 years ago, none of us saw Curry
And he
coming.
was up on the trading block. They were going to get rid of him, and they're lucky that Curry was willing to sign this very team-friendly contract where he wasn't getting paid a lot and it was all incentive-based. So he had to stay healthy, and he was able to stay healthy for the most part, and has completely gone bananas shooting.
Yeah.
And passing. I mean, this team is so great at passing. It's how basketball should be played. I think that's one of the greatest things that you see when you watch them is just like it's just how freely the ball flows, and it just feels like you're watching a very good movie because it feels like it's all supposed to go where the ball goes exactly where it's supposed to go.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing about the team, I mean, they're a super team now, but 4 years ago, I mean, Golden State spent most of their years in mediocrity.
Mm-hmm.
And I do like seeing a team win, growing it on their own. I mean, yeah, they traded for KD, so this year they were the super team, but in the years past, they built that together. The passing, the assists per game, the shooting, the personalities. Now we all know who Green is, and we all know who Curry is, and
Thompson
Thompson and Iggy. Iggy. We even have a nickname for him. None of us knew who he was 4 years ago. Iggy.
Yeah, and mind
and he
you,
won the MVP of the first championship they won,
and
right?
essentially because he was guarding LeBron James and inhibiting him, even though he had one of the greatest stat lines of all time. And mind you, the reason why the Warriors are able to compete and keep this team together, at least for the next few years, is because they drafted these guys. So, when you put a team together, this is the problem that Cleveland finds themselves in, is they're right against the cap. They're already paying a lot of luxury tax. So even if they wanted, bringing in another guy like Paul George, like they had wanted to, they could do it, but it's just another cap hit. And
huge cap hit.
And so it was gonna be it was gonna be hard for them, and that's the another pillar of greatness that Golden State exhibits, is that they were able to homegrown these guys and be able to build from there.
Yeah.
And you see teams like this that can do that. I mean, I'm disappointed in OKC that they weren't able to hold on to their 3 stars. They had Harden, they had KD, and then they drafted Westbrook. So, I mean, you have to. There's a little bit of luck that goes into that.
And they had Serge Ibaka on that team as well.
Yeah, I think,
at that time, right?
Yeah.
At that time.
I kind of wonder if he was traded for, though. I don't know if he was drafted.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. I think he was traded for.
But really,
it's weird to think about now, because at some point in OKC, those 4 guys are on the same team, and they didn't get the championship.
Yeah, I mean, they did get there once. Got beat by LeBron. But you see, and even with, Utah's had their one glory day too, and they drafted Malone and Stockton and Hornacek, and we had Bill Russell, and not Byron Russell, sorry.
Yeah.
Brian Russell.
Yeah. That's a blast from the past.
Yeah. So I mean, teams can do this. This is doable. And, maybe we're seeing this with the 76ers. We still have to, that still remains to be seen.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, the Jazz, at least with Stockton and Malone, that was a drafted and built legacy.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't trade for it. It's not like Malone was already a superstar and they traded for him and put up the big money for him. They grew that from the ground up.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the 76ers can do it now with their draft class. It was great to see Golden State do it. Of course, once they traded for KD, it's like, all right, we've got a few years just to watch this show happen. Is there anybody else that is building from the ground up that you're excited about?
No, I mean, I wish, Boston is, going to be a work in progress. We'll see what they have now with Hayward.
If that's true.
If what they have with Hayward.
It's probably true. I mean, we've been hearing those rumors for months.
I still feel like you're seeing a team that's missing something. So I don't know. I mean, not. And then I really like, we've touched on Minnesota. I like what I'm seeing out of Minnesota as well. But a lot of cool new things coming up in the West. So I know that the Warriors won't skate through the playoffs this year. I mean, given that no one gets injured, because
one gets injured. Let's be prophetic then. Who is going to be, over this next year, the Warriors' biggest competition?
I think if the Rockets can figure out Chris Paul and Harden, if the Rockets can figure out how to get Chris Paul, Harden on the same page, I really believe that D'Antoni is going to figure out a way to do it.
Yeah.
That's going to be the team. They're the ones that can match him pound per pound on the threes.
Yeah. Sure.
Now they're upgrading. They've upgraded the defensive quality to them, and I really liked before CP3. What was it? I think it was 2 years ago that CP3 and Steph Curry got into it, and CP3 is not afraid to talk some shit. And I think
he never has. That's part of his personality.
Yeah. So I think that would be interesting, just the mental aspect of it, because I think that gives them the Houston Rockets a little bit of an edge. And I want to see what Minnesota does too. I think that core, Butler, Teague, and Karl Anthony Towns. I think that sounds amazing. We'll see what happens. I mean, you got another great defensive core there too. So a lot of cool things to look forward to in the NBA for this next season.
It's going to be an exciting season, and we'll have to see next year just how relevant this conversation was.
Yes. This is on record now, so.
This is exactly.
So, yeah. Woo! What a huge episode. We started with happy freaking birthday, America.
Happy birthday.
Staying true to our show's meaning about how sports aren't just sports. Oftentimes, their consequences, their meaning extends far past the ground that it's played on. We talked about trades and rumors. It's been a great episode. I'm really, really psyched about this one.
It has been a great episode, with the exception that perhaps Gordon Hayward is no longer with us.
Tears. But next time, we'll have something special regarding Hayward, so make sure you tune in. This is It's Not Sports. I'm your host, Callie Sinovia.
And I'm Tyson Rex.
And we're out of here. Adios.
Adios.